There's people that come through the door that are in complete crisis. They could have lost their job, they could have lost their home. There's the pressure to be the good mum, the good dad. They feel their only option at that point is to take their life. 2 people every single day. Scotland's just one example of that. The correct figures are a lot higher than what's actually quoted.
Welcome to the podcast, Death, a Changing Industry. Today, with a great pleasure to speak with Scott Munn. Scott, welcome. Thank you for joining us all the way down from Glasgow.
Thank you, John.
So firstly then, can you give us a bit of an introduction and background about the work that you do day to day?
Sure. So my family, John, were at one time the oldest family of funeral directors in Scotland. It started in 1811. So I'm the 12th generation of the family to be a funeral director. We sold the business in 2011 to a larger company. I grew up in the family business, and funerals is all I've ever known.
So we'll come back to funerals shortly, but you're also heavily involved in a group up in Glasgow called Men with Issues.
Yep.
How did you get involved with that as well?
The group was started, the concept initially came from 2 guys who had been kind of dealing with some addiction issues and been going through the support available for people struggling with addiction, whether it be alcohol or drugs. Through that journey, they discovered that if you didn't have those issues, there wasn't really anywhere to go. There wasn't much support. You know, you've got the NHS, of course, who will support with mental health. However, the wait times that we see in Scotland are upwards of a year in some cases for help, for referrals. If you don't have an addiction issue, we then got together and started talking about the fact that there must be loads of people out there who struggle every day and maybe don't have an issue with alcohol or drugs. It could be a multitude of things. It could be one thing. It could be life. It could be pressure. And that led to us then forming the group. Yeah.
I think there has been a stigma around groups, around counselling, that like if you're doing that, I think in the past, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
So like we were talking before, like fix the roof or the sun is shining is an expression that I love.
Absolutely.
So what do you see then? Do you see men who come to the group who have like severe problems, or is there guys there who just need a bit of extra support as well? Like what do you see? Yeah,
so to be honest, John, we see it all. I mean, we really do. There's people that come through the door that are in complete crisis. You know, and they're at that point, some of them who, you know, are quite vocal about the fact that they feel their only option at that point is to take their life.
Yeah.
You know, other people who may have issues with work, it could be relationships, it could be people struggling with addiction as well. Sometimes people maybe not knowing what the problem is, but knowing something's not right. And, you know, we say to people all the time, if it's a thing for you, then it's a thing. You know, there's no set label, there's no set parameters for what that looks like. It's different for every person. But if you feel something's not right, then you need to get help. You know, and there isn't many options out there for people. There really is not.
Yeah, until it's almost too late.
Absolutely. You know,
we were talking about the statistics around suicides in Scotland, and the latest statistics was 2 suicides per day throughout Scotland.
Yeah.
But you were saying actually that measurement isn't quite correct. It could be higher than that because some deaths that are recorded, and that's what you see as a funeral director as well, that some deaths might be someone has taken their life, but actually on the registration or how the death is recorded, it's not down as suicide. So actually, how correct are these results effectively?
Yeah, and they're not. They're far out, John. You know, and unfortunately, the correct figures are a lot higher than what's actually quoted. Yeah. And even those quoted figures in themselves, that's completely alarming.
Yeah.
Those sort of numbers. You know, when you think 2 people every single day, and Scotland's just one example of that. You know, it's happening everywhere. It happens in England and everywhere else as well, unfortunately. And it's like you say, John, being in the business that we're in, you see it more.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember being amazed. There was a point in time when I actually looked over the period of a year and thought back on the amount of families that we cared for, and it had been somebody who had taken their own life. And, you know, even that, as a percentage of the families that we look after, which is a bit more localised, you know, in and around Glasgow, those numbers are frightening.
Yeah. Why is it, Scott? Why are we seeing a rise in suicide? Well, firstly, are we seeing a rise? And secondly, why? What's happening? So
I think definitely we are seeing a rise. I think there's even more societal pressure on people, John. And, you know, we talk often about our group being a men's group. for males, but it's the same. It's the same for females as well. There's the pressure to be the good mum, the good dad. Social media gets talked about often, and rightfully so. It's a great thing if it does a good job, but it can also have a detrimental effect on people's mental health as well. We talk about how to be something by Instagram. You've got to be this, you've got to be that. And that's something we see a lot with the guys that come through the door. It's the pressure of being, a dad, a husband, being the provider. Yep. It's that stigma, and it's not right, but it's something that's there.
Do you think, again, social media, that you hear like people will compare their lives to people, this false environment on social media? Do you think that is a fact? Do you think that contributes, or do you think that's a thing, like comparing?
100%, John. Even if people say they don't, I think they do.
Subconsciously?
Yeah. You see somebody, it could be somebody you went to school with, you're both the same age, and he's got a corporate job, he's got a nice family, a house, he goes 3 holidays every year, and you might be the guy who's working all the hours that God sends. You don't have half of what he's got. Even that in itself is enough to get the wheels turning in your head, to think you're not good enough. There's doubt, self-criticism, it's easy.
And then because this is really interesting, because we were saying before as well, like celebrities and like footballers, they have this perception and they're almost not human. But like you said on your group, Men with Issues, you have the range of people. It proves that actually we're all human. No one is immune to getting attacked from within. So like, do you see that as well? Like this life of wealth and the things that can put pressure on people, from either comparing or actually when people have got all this stuff, they're like, I'm not happy. Yep. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. There's such a range of people, and again, unfortunately, we do get people that come through the door that are in complete crisis, and maybe the stage they're at in their life as well. They could have lost their job, they could have lost their home, they could have nothing. And we do get people that come to us that are at that stage, but we also get people that come who, from the outside, they tick every box and more. So they've got the nice house, the great job, the family,
the car.
They can do all these different things. And I mean, sometimes with those people, it's having all that and still feeling a bit of emptiness and something not right. It's not enough, almost, and not understanding maybe why they feel that way.
Yeah.
But also some of those people have the same deep-rooted issues that the guy at the other end of the spectrum has as well.
Yeah.
So there's this stigma around, if you've got all these things, life is great and the garden's rosy, but in actual fact, it couldn't be further from the truth.
So we talked about what things might contribute to affect mental fitness in a negative way. What do you think can affect mental fitness in a positive way? What can we do better?
I think breaking the stigma is the first thing, John. Certainly where we are in Glasgow, there's still a massive stigma around it. We will engage with probably 1 or 2 people a week who want to come to the group. And I know deep down that the reason that it takes them weeks and weeks and weeks to get through the door, 9 times out of 10 it's that stigma, fear of judgment. What are people going to say? And it's a big thing to come to a group like ours, because there is that label floating about that, there's something not right with that guy. He had to go and get help. But there's no shame in getting help. Having an issue or having a problem or a decline in your mental fitness doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you, it doesn't take away from the fact that you are a good father, a good husband, a good partner, and all of these things. So there's still that stigma. Which is a big issue, and that kind of stems into the social media side of things as well, John. I think that's the first thing, and then the other big part is having the conversation and speaking about it. Remove the taboo from it, because again, that still lingers, and I think it stops a lot of people from even engaging in the first place. And half the time, that's the first step. Have the conversation, tell somebody how you feel. We do a lot of workshops with the group and go into different businesses and different environments, and I always tell this story. We were doing some work with government vessels up in Aberdeen, so ships would go on compliance vessels and go away to sea for 3 weeks at a time, and guys that have been doing that have been working with the same crew, some of them for 20, 30 years, and it took us going in and hours of a workshop for somebody to open up about how they felt. And the biggest thing I got from that experience was that there was another 20 guys on that boat that had worked with this chap all this time, and none of them had any idea. Now, this guy's potentially spending more time with these 20 guys than he has his own family, and they didn't know about it. And they were then all totally shocked, and they couldn't get their head around it. And that's how much pressure that chap had felt to keep that buried down and not discuss it. And you could almost see when he opened up the weight and the pain coming away from his face and his shoulders. Even just sharing it and being able to tell people, that's not the start of the solution to his issue, but even just having the conversation.
So before they engage with your group then, or groups like yours, sort of day to day, you mentioned like the crew of that guy there, they had no idea where their friend was at or their work colleague was at. Are there any questions or things that we can do better amongst our peers, friends and families to sort of not just say, hey, how you feeling? Are there other things we can do to sort of be more helpful in our approach?
I think that there's a few things that we've taken on, and I mean, the past year for me has been a massive journey of learning, John, and probably self-reflection as well, in some of the positions that I've been in at times when I've struggled before. And I always think, no matter how I was feeling, if somebody asked me how I was, I would always say, I'm all right.
Natural response.
And in Glasgow, all right, that means a multitude of things. That's how you say hello. That's how you greet somebody you've not seen for 10 years. It's how you say hello to your mate, so how you doing? Yeah, I'm all right. And that's it. But are they really all right? And one of the things that we've done off the back of that in the workplace, and we encourage the group to do the same, is ask somebody how they've slept. So if I see somebody in the morning and I think, maybe look a bit down, how did you sleep, John? And you might say, fine. I said, how did you sleep, John? And you might say, I had a rubbish sleep. I've been up all night. I'm going to ask you, why have you been up all night? Now, if you say to me, it's nothing, I know there's something, and I'm going to come at you again and say, John, what's going on? And we've had examples of that where it's proved the difference between somebody being able to open up and speak, so somebody tells you they're all right, it doesn't actually mean they're all right.
It's like you say, it's almost, how are you? It's almost like a hello.
Yeah, exactly.
Really? How much depth and intent is behind that to actually find out how you're getting on.
Yeah.
But how do you ask that question? I think they're asking the question, how did you sleep? How have you slept?
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful question to ask, because then it's not putting someone on the spot. They still have a choice how they engage with that question.
100%.
But then the answer to that is able to measure, if you're sleeping sound, then usually things
are pretty good.
Yeah. So I think that's fantastic advice.
And I think with that as well, it extends the conversation. So if you're having an interaction with somebody and it's a very brief interaction, it's quite difficult sometimes to gauge. If it's somebody you know really well, maybe your significant other or whoever, you've probably got an idea because you're used to them, you spend a lot of time with them. But if it's a colleague or maybe a friend that you don't see that much, that passing exchange of you're right, I'm all right, doesn't give much away, whereas that deepens that conversation, and it's in those moments maybe you get a glimpse into how somebody really does feel.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you, Scott. So the big question I have now then is at the group, Men with Issues, so someone turns up, someone comes, what actually happens there? What do you actually do?
So there's a set of rules and a set of guiding principles for the group. We respect the room, we respect each other, there's no bravado, we're there to support each other. And we make sure that people coming into the room know they're in a safe environment. They're in an environment that's free of judgment, and it's a space where they can open up. Confidentiality is key, of course, so anything we share in the room stays in the room. People open up. The space needs to be safe for them to do so. There's no pressure on anybody to speak either. So some people are hesitant to engage with us because they think they have to come and pour their heart out in the first meeting, and it's absolutely not the case. It's to be in the space and feel the power and the energy of the room, hear other people being vulnerable. And often I think that's what leads to somebody who's hesitant to open up, is that, because if somebody else, they're sitting in a room with 10 strangers, 20 strangers, these guys are opening up, it puts their mind at ease, and they go, yeah, okay. And one of the things I love about the group and in the environment is that 9 times out of 10 when we meet, somebody will say something and it's followed by, wow, I've never said that in my life before out loud, or I've never told anybody that. So that shows the power of the space. So we try and convey that to people that come through the door, and obviously part of it, John, is making an assessment on their situation. Why did they come to us, and trying to find that out, and then working out the best pathway to support them. And it could be that maybe they need external input or other resources, but again, we can signpost them and engage them with different services if we feel that's what's needed, which sometimes does happen.
Have you seen I think like with levels of discomfort and doing things that are uncomfortable, such as talking about your own situation, if it's in a negative or you're in a bad place, when we do things of discomfort, then we can find growth. Have you seen people come to you in a real dark situation, and then suddenly, because of their tackling their discomfort head on, they're just flown, like they're just like flying?
Absolutely. There's so many examples of that, John.
Yeah.
And to me, that is the most rewarding part of what we do.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot take a buzz off of that. Seeing somebody turn their life around, literally, which is what happens. And it's funny, like, we get people that will come and they'll say a million times, by the way, I'm not going to speak. I'm not going to say anything. And again, we say, look, there's no pressure to speak. No, you don't even need to say your name. And often it's those guys that, you know, when we go around the room, they open up, because by the time it's got to them, they're relaxed, they're comfortable, they've seen the vulnerability in the room, and then that starts that journey of repair, recovery, understanding, processing. And you know, the journey's a long one for a lot of people. For others it's short, but for most people it's a journey. Between that and the fact that we're not medics, we're guys with lived experience. Again,
they're people that have been in these positions, and they can actually give their lived experiences to people who are again in their positions.
Yep.
That's the ultimate tutoring, really, isn't it?
100%.
Mentorship. I've been there.
Exactly,
you know.
And that's, a lot of the guys say that's what they find so much more comfortable than maybe if they've been referred for therapy, for talking sake, or to go and see a counsellor. They'll sit and they've got a guy across, or a guy or a woman across from them, with a white, you know, a certificate on the wall and a clipboard. Whereas, like, guys in our group can actually say, John, I know how you feel, because I've actually been there.
Hey guys, thank you for watching the video so far. I hope you're really enjoying it. Please click the thumbs up on the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, a huge thank you to our sponsors. Their details are found in the video description just below. Thank you so much.
What initiated you to get so involved and invested 12, 18 months ago? What was it? Was there a moment that you thought, I need to do something?
Yeah, I think that a couple of factors in that for me, John. Again, it's back to what we do. Yeah. You know, and seeing that far too much. You know, I was amazed at the amount of times when I had kind of a better understanding of what we did as a business. And I'm speaking about, you know, our original family business, because I went into that from school not really understanding probably the importance of what we did. Yeah. It was a job that my family had always done. It was a thing that I was going to do when I left school, because that's what, you know, the 11 generations before me did.
And also you've grown up around it. So like you go, you know,
I would walk out the house in the morning and there would be a hearse with a coffin with somebody who'd passed away in it, waiting to go on a funeral, and I'd be skipping out going to school, because we literally lived on the same site. So that was every single morning.
That's the thing, a mortuary space is just a normal working environment for you. It's like, it's important. It'd be a respected environment, because obviously your family 100%. Would have instilled that into you. But from like it's just normal.
Totally. And it was the old thing, you know, folk coming, my pals at school coming up to the house. You know, some of them are hesitant because of what, whereas I'm like, I don't understand why anybody's got an issue. So the older I got and the further into my kind of journey, and particularly my leadership and kind of business journey, if you like, you know, you look at the numbers, you look at the facts and figures, you look at all these things, and I remember one day sitting in kind of the penny dropping and going, like, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people that are taking their own life that we are caring for. So seeing that aspect, and also the other side of that for me, John, is, again, you'll be familiar with this, but you go into an environment and you're caring for a family who are in that situation at the other side of what maybe somebody taking their own life can look like. Yeah. It's a difficult environment, it can be a traumatic environment, and it can be quite raw to see that at the front end. You know, like really being in the midst of that pain and that grief. And we're an outsider, we're there to help, but we only get to see just that, you know, a small amount of what that actually must be like.
You're right.
So that for me, seeing that was a real driver. And also throughout the years, I've had my own battles. You know, in terms of, there's been points where I've struggled before. And probably if I had maybe support that I've got now through the group, those periods in my life maybe where I did struggle, they would have been a lot easier to manage.
But then also the dark places that you may have been to may make you more of an effective leader now, and a mentor with the groups that you're doing.
Absolutely.
You're right there about being at the forefront. And I think, again, with what we do with funerals and arranging, and like, not funerals and arranging, because I think when we say that, people see a shiny hearse and a coffin.
Yeah, they do.
We're about people.
absolutely.
I never forget being in someone's home in Bridge North at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and a young person had by accident taken their own life, by accident.
Right.
And I never forget the scream of his mother.
Yeah.
And it stays with me still now, actually. Like, I've never heard anything, a noise like it. So like, I understand like why you're so invested in it, really.
Yeah.
So like,
and I think for me, you know, there was a period where I cared for a family that I knew quite well, and I knew the person that had passed away, and the boy had taken his own life, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to his dad, you know, after we'd done all the process and the formalities of everything, what can I do? And he said to me, well, you can't bring my son back, so nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and that for me was like a real moment.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't equipped at that stage to even proceed on with that conversation, because I was out of my depth. I had no idea, but it was a real learning curve for me, because it's like understanding the severity of the situation that we can find ourselves in.
Again, with funerals and our sort of day-to-day world, for you and I have grown up around it. A mortuary space is just like, well, it's a normal space.
Yep.
But then actually, is it a normal space? And we're kind of like institutionalised to it because it is so normal to us. So for ourselves and for people who are around death continuously, and also who see traumatic things like sudden deaths, taking your own life, and then funerals teams will go in and take care of these people, and you know, that scream that I heard. You know, what support is there for funeral teams, and do you think there needs to be more, or do you think it's adequate? What's your views around that?
For us as a business, we have probably been guilty for a period of time, and maybe not really focusing on that as much as we should have until more recent years. And I think, to be honest, that's a bit of a generational thing, John. I think there's a lot of businesses that would be in the same boat there.
Yeah.
You know, when I came into the business, there was no sort of warning or understanding of what we might do and what we might need to do. It was just like, that's part of your job.
Yeah.
And it's a, you know, I don't blame my parents and my grandpa for that. You know, it's just a generational thing.
Yeah. So it's what we do.
It's what we do. Yeah. It's what we do, and you do what you do, and that's it. It's that simple. And I remember when we sold our business to the larger company at the time had the police contract in Glasgow. So we then got involved in, you know, all of that work for the Procurator Fiscal or the coroner.
Sudden deaths, unexpected deaths.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of new to me, because up until that point, when I was handling remains in the first instance, deceased people that was in the environment of their own home, in the nursing home, or perhaps from a hospital mortuary. So you weren't really, you know, there was a few situations where perhaps it was a difficult environment to go into, but never anything like what you would see doing that. So that kind of opened my eyes a wee bit, but even then still, it was like you just got on with it. And I remember being quite annoyed at the larger company at one time, because we had dealt with a couple of major incidents in Glasgow. There was a major incident involving a helicopter crash, and then another one in a busy shopping area of Glasgow with a bin lorry where unfortunately quite a lot of people lost their life, and we were involved with recovering the remains at that point. And after that, we were offered support, and you know, at first I was like, well, that's good that they're considering that. That's been quite a traumatic thing for us to deal with. But then on reflection, I started to think about all the situations where we'd been to accidents, people taking their own life, you know, maybe murders, these sort of things. Some of those things were just as, if not more traumatic than that particular environment that we found ourselves in at that time. And I kind of posed the question to them, why is it only now? You know, what's different about this? Because the job that we have to do hasn't changed. Those incidents were much more high profile, you know, and they were extremely tragic. And they involved a lot more people, but the individuals that were doing that job, the job they were doing was no different. And it really got me thinking about, well, actually, maybe that's something that has to be looked at and has to be put in place. Unfortunately, with it being a larger, you know, UK-wide organisation, it's very difficult to incite change and do those sort of things. But since that moment, it's something that I've always sort of focused on. And I think over the past 12 months in our business, I mean, we've got best part of 60 full-time staff. Dealing with a high volume of funerals, but we deal with a lot of tragic circumstances as well. And there was a period in the business a few months ago where we had quite a few really, really tragic circumstances with families that we were caring for. And I think the whole team felt it, John, you know, and that was like a moment again where was a check-in with everybody and reminding them that, you know, there is resources, there's people they can speak to. One of the things that we did last year was we introduced mental health first aiders across the business.
Good.
So every area of the business has a male and a female that's got the mental health first aid course under their belt, and that they can speak to and open up. And it's people that are well thought of within the workplace as well. Yeah. So I'd like to think that out of the bank of people that we've got there, there's somebody that's comfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's back to the bit about accepting that for being a job, and that's what we do, and you get on with it. You know, I think we're really guilty as funeral directors of just kind of forgetting the severity of what we do sometimes, and it's like, yeah, but that's your job. It must be really difficult, but that's your job.
Once we start to highlight the support that can be brought into funeral homes, do we start to value our purpose and role even more? Like, say the stuff that we do around sudden deaths, even around like deaths that have been expected, but it can still be so traumatic.
Yeah.
So like then perhaps we'll start to value our roles and ourselves in what we're doing even more. Like how special and wonderful the role actually is. Because again, we've always said, haven't we, that like during COVID we weren't recognised. We weren't seen as those key workers.
Yep.
So like perhaps that's how we'd start to do it. Is you say like caring for by giving care to others actually starts by caring for yourself.
Yeah. So
perhaps that ties into that what we're saying.
So true, John. And you know, it's funny. I was speaking to my colleague Kate, who runs the office. She's a funeral arranger at Scott Munn & Co, and she's brilliant. She's an Australian lady. Been a funeral arranger for the best part of 20 years now. I get loads of feedback about Kate and what she does, and it's not just like somebody saying, oh, she was lovely, and you know, she arranged mum's funeral and everything that was the way it had to be. It goes beyond that. It's people writing to me, taking the time to write me a letter to tell me that if it wasn't for Kate and the support she'd given, they wouldn't have got through the past month. You know, but again, it's like it takes us a good bit of work to be able to acknowledge that for what it is, and understand even the importance of that. That defines the impact that she's had on just one particular family. Yeah. And it's like, but that's my job.
Yeah. So that tees me up to my next question then, really, about it being a special job, a special role. For the actual purpose of a funeral, why do funerals matter?
It's an opportunity for somebody to say goodbye.
Yeah.
We're providing the space. And when I say space, I don't necessarily mean, you know, a building or a room, but you know, it's that environment for somebody to grieve and go through the process and do the things they need to do. Yeah. And it's really hard to define what that is because it differs for every person. However, you know, if you as a funeral director, a funeral arranger, somebody who works in the funeral business understands the severity and the importance of that, you know, it's a special space. It's a real privilege and an honour for us to be able to do that for any family. Yeah. And understanding that, to me, then allows them to go and make that funeral whatever that needs to be. And I always feel that a funeral, like life, it's different for every person. Yeah. Every life's unique, so a funeral should be no different. You know, people say, what's normal? Well, what should we do? And it's like, well, no, what do you want to do? Tell me more, so I can tell you the best way to move forward with things.
Fantastic. But then, if we go back slightly, keeping that in our minds, why funerals matter, but then also men with issues, what you're doing there, and then also now with the rise of an unattended direct cremation, when there's no funeral service at all, there's no contact with your loved one, why funerals matter, men with issues, and the rise of this new method of, it's not a funeral, it's a transaction. Is there connection there with men with issues and mental health, mental fitness decline, and actually a lack of contact, and coming back to why funerals matter? Is there some correlation there?
I think there is, John. Yeah, absolutely. And for me, the amount of families that I have spoken to who have maybe had like a direct cremation, you know, and went for that option that then regret it. I sat in front of a family about 2 years ago. I'll never forget it. And this man and his two sons came to see me to arrange a funeral. Never met them before. And he came in and he was, you know, he said, listen, I'm just going to say this. I don't know how to deal with this, but my wife wanted a direct cremation. The lady knew that she was terminally ill, knew she was going to pass. That man sat in front of me and battled for hours in his head because he wanted to have a funeral. I think he needed to have a funeral, and his sons needed to have a funeral. And I found myself in a really difficult spot, you know, trying to guide him, but maybe not understanding 100% about the situation. And he ended up respecting his wife's wishes. And having, going with the direct cremation, I know it's something they severely regretted, and I think it's often now we see families with a misunderstanding of what that is, what a direct cremation actually is. They only understand what it is after it's happened, by which point it's too late. I think the journey of grief, the funeral is part of that process.
It's basic to say there are other options, and
Definitely.
there is, a funeral can be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, and whatever you need it to be as well. And I think people have always been mindful. Like, I remember when I started out, there was a phrase in Glasgow, and it was along the lines of, if you're not in the coffin, you're not important. But nowadays a funeral is part of the loved ones and the families that are left behind. It's part of their process as well. It's part of their journey, and it has an impact on them. It has an impact on how they cope with the loss of their loved one. It has an impact on how they adapt to moving on with their life. And that's something that could happen over a period. For some people, a few days. For others, it can be a few years. Some people, it can be 10 years or longer. So, doing the right thing in that moment, when it comes to making those decisions, it's so important.
Mental fitness, funerals, taboos. On taboos as well, where do you stand around breaking the taboos down at a younger age, like for children, young adults, children at appropriate age, around mental fitness, around funerals, around death? Where do you sit with that? How do you view this?
I'm all for it, John. I'm all for it. I think the conversation needs to happen sooner. We go into schools with the group, some high schools, and speak to children who are, between 14 and 16, and talk to them about life pressures, it's like we mentioned earlier on, Facebook, social media, Instagram, whatever it is, the pressures that come with that. I think at school now, when I was at school, when you were at school, John, we didn't have that.
No.
You may be worried about the guy that came in or the kid that came in with a new pair of trainers on, and your trainers were old and tatty, but you didn't worry about what everybody was doing, folk showing off their dad's new car, folk doing this. And when we speak to these kids in the schools, that's the sort of things that they're dealing with. You ask them what their biggest worry is as well. A lot of time it's the pressure on defining the next chapter in their life as well. About choosing their subjects, what they're going to do when they leave school. There's a big drive on that. And there has to be, because it's life. People progress. All of these things, it's a lot of pressure for kids. And I think as a society, we've been very guilty of, again, it's like that, well, that's what you need to do. It's maybe not your job at that point, but it's like that's what you need to do, so you get on with it. But nobody ever says, are you all right getting on with it? Can we help you get on with it? And I know some people do, but in broader terms, at school, like, that's a process you go through. So when we go in and speak in the schools, people are kind of like, oh, right, okay, so you guys felt the same, that's what we get. And listen, we've been there. I was the same at school. I remember thinking, I don't know what I want to do. A bit different for me because I knew longer term, but at school I'm like, I don't know, because I have no idea where do I go next, and it's the same around funerals. I think the conversation around funerals, I would encourage MD to come through any of our doors. I do quite a lot on social media. Say to people to come into the funeral home, have a look about. Dignity and respect are at the forefront of everything that we do, and that goes without saying, but it gives people an insight into what that's like. And I think by doing that, we encourage the conversation around death, which then makes people more comfortable. That maybe defines what somebody, or that makes the difference between somebody being able to have the conversation with their family and let them know what they want, which leads to everything being the way it should be for that particular person.
That's brilliant, Scott, thank you. One of my final questions to you is the future of Scott Munn.
Sure.
I mean, do you have like goals that you're aiming towards? I mean, what's next for you?
Yeah, so I think it's been, again, from a business perspective, it's been quite a journey over the past few years. John, working at Anderson Maguire, which is, it's a fantastic business to work in. It really is. It's an incredible platform in Glasgow, and the business has been built. And most people in the industry will know of Dom. But for those that don't, he founded the business in July 1982, so it's been going with 43 years this year. He's been in funerals for 50 years. He had quite, I think, in my opinion, a simple sort of method to growing the business, and that was understanding what people want and understanding the importance of what he did, and he's never lost sight of those things. But he's been able to grow the business to quite a large scale. It's a reasonably big operation, but still hold on to those things and make sure that they're at the forefront of what we do. So my time at Anderson Maguire, I think my journey up until then was understanding the importance of what I did, what a funeral was, and the impact that we can have on families and how we support families.
Yeah.
Going there, it's continued that journey, but it's also really let me understand the kind of commercial aspect and you know, how the business operates and what that looks like on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
But all of that whilst protecting all those core values and everything that's really important to the families that we serve.
Yeah.
We've never lost sight of that. So for me to be learning, you know, while I'm growing, I suppose,
yeah.
Is incredible. But I would love to be able to do what Anderson Maguire has done. You know, Dom was really good at what he did. He's got the business to a place now where the people in the business are really good at what they do. So it's like if it works in one place, it works in another because we're passionate and we care. And I don't care any less about Scott Munn & Co. So I would like to grow the business, John. And
yeah.
I think as the business grows, naturally, the services that we offer extend. And what I mean by that is out with funerals, it's that support and engagement.
Yeah.
You know, I would like to break the stigma. We sometimes, funeral directors have a bit of a trauma bond with families. We don't choose to have that, but we do. You know, you probably have it yourself, John, or maybe families that you care for. It can be weeks before they can work up the courage to walk back through the doors. And I think we know the community quite well.
Yeah.
We understand what they need. It's different for everybody, but we've got a broader understanding of what that looks like. So keep doing what I'm doing, I suppose, John.
I think it's really clear that your reason why for doing it, helping the living, is very clear to us all and at the forefront of what you're doing. So, yeah, well done, Scott, and keep doing it. You're doing it very well. So, and thank you for travelling down from Glasgow to be with us today. It really does mean a lot.
Thanks for that. So. Thanks for having me, John. I really appreciate it. Good
Thanks
man.
much, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheers.
you. A huge thank you for watching the episodes, and also a huge thanks to our sponsors. Without them, this is not possible. Please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out the video and episode of the Difficult Conversation. Thank you.